All right. So, okay, it's telling me it's recording now. All right. So, overnight, I asked you to find some exemplary perspectives to sort of frame and export out. Um, Again, as a reminder, I think in both Rhino and Revit, you can export as PNG file with transparent background, right? So it'd look like this when you bring it into Photoshop. That checkerboard means that there's no pixel information. It's just completely transparent, no pixels whatsoever, as you can see. Um, if you accidentally save as a JPEG, I mean, I like JPEGs, but they don't preserve alpha channels. They don't have transparent pixels, and so it might make your background black or white or gray or whatever it is, right? If that's the case, and it's sometimes it's easier just to clip these things out than it is to go back all the way back to Rhino or Revit and re-export. If that's the case, we'll go over several things today to sort of help you with that. All right. So, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about these tools over here, how we can start to select things. We'll select this black background and delete it away. Of course, I don't have to rely on that because I have that PNG with the transparent background, but it could be good practice for us to see how that's done. Um, then I'll open up some textures that I just find online, and show you guys how to begin to map those onto these things. We'll do a little bit with brushes, both when it comes to erasing as well as dodging and burning. In other words, adding shade, um, adding brightness and highlights. All right, so excuse me. There's a number of selection tools over here. So when you look at the tools over here on the left, we have this one. It's the sort of typical move sort of cursor tool. Looks like a arrow and it's pointing at something, right? Okay. And right now it's just telling me, hey, you're trying to select this background. Please stop. Right. So I'm just going to say cancel, whatever. I don't really care. But you can see that down here, there's a dashed line with a rectangle, right? Rectangle with a dashed line around it. So this is the typical way we can start to select things, right? Let's say I want to select this part of the image and I can say Control C, right? And then Control V. And now I've basically made a copy of that, right? So I selected that portion just to make a copy of it. When I make a copy and paste, um, you can see that the new part shows up in a new layer, right? So if I just want to get rid of this, I can just delete that layer. All right. You can see that there's other types of shapes you can make, ellipses, circles, single rows, etc. Um, But then sometimes, a lot of most of the time, actually, when we want to select something, it doesn't lend itself to a perfect rectangle or perfect circle. We want to be able to sort of freehand things. So there are other sort of tools that we can start to select with. There's a lasso tool, sort of a freehand tool. There's a polygonal lasso tool that lets us draw a polyline around things and sort of click around the screen. And there's the magnetic lasso tool. So let me just show you what the difference between these things are. Um, I'm just going to zoom in on a tighter area. Let's say I'm going to try to clip out this black area here. The lasso tool by default just lets me freehand a shape. And it's all based on accuracy, right? You can see I wasn't very accurate when I'm trying to do this with a mouse, right? So that's sorry, some of these others can come in handy. So if I click and hold that lasso tool, I can get the polygonal lasso tool, then I can zoom in. I'm just swiping with my touchpad to zoom in. Of course, it's Command or Control plus, Command or Control minus, depending on which operating system you're using. This lets me actually click, 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 and draw a polyline, just like in Rhino for the shape that I want, right? So then when I select that, it's going to ask me what I want here, to sort of fill in the background now. So a couple of other things, right? I'm going to double click this background layer. The reason I'm doing that is because it's called background and it's locked. That limits what I can do with it. What I'm going to do is double click and just make it a regular layer. And now I can turn that layer on and off. You can see that I have like a transparent background behind. So now I can delete that part of the layer away, right? You can see that I kind of got rid of that the black outline. You can see I wasn't, again, even even with drawing these sort of straight lines between points, I wasn't quite accurate, right? You can still see some of that black background there. Okay. Let's see here. Of course, the magnetic lasso tool is sort of a mixture of both. It's sort of a freehand, and it tries to, if you drag your cursor like I'm doing along edges, then it tries to sort of figure out edges, right? By comparing the pixels and tries to make a shape. Again, it can be as accurate or inaccurate as you like, and how much patience you have. Um, Here's a really useful one. It's called Magic Wand Tool. Magic Wand Tool tries to select pixels that are similar to the one that you're selecting on the screen, right? So if I select one of these black pixels, it's going to select all of the black pixels around it as well. Okay. The Magic Wand tool is your best friend. You can see when I use the Magic Wand tool, there are some options that pop up here on the top, right? So one is, do you want to select all the pixels that are black in the entire image, or do you want just the pixels that are contiguous, right, with the one that I selected, right? In other words, do I want to just select this island of black, or if I uncheck contiguous, I can select all the black pixels, right, in the image, and then delete them away. There's also a tolerance, like how, when you zoom in, way in on these edges, for instance, when you zoom out, it looks pretty stark black and white. When you zoom in, actually, you can see that there's grays and everything else. And so the tolerance will say, well, how far do I want to deviate from this black value that you selected to include dark grays, etc., right? So, and then you have that. Um, Sorry, excuse me. I'm just going to zoom out and fit the screen by looking Control 0 or Command 0. Right. So anyway, I'm just going to go around with the Magic Wand tool and select all this black stuff out, delete it away. Right. Now I'm ready once again to sort of lay things up in here, including a sky and a background, whatever I want to do. All right. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this JPEG away. It's not so useful to me anymore. And again, just as a quick reminder here. So we talked about this a little before with perspectives, but one of the things I like to do is oftentimes, I'll make a new layer down here. You can see that we have a layers box on the right-hand side. I'm going to say, click this plus sign down at the bottom of the layers box. Just going to move this up so it's out of the way a bit. All right, there we go. And you can see that I created a new layer, named it layer 2. Not a big surprise since the first layer was layer 1. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly sort of try to figure out, I'm just going to use the line tool. I'm just going to try to figure out where that perspective vanishing point is. Right. So I'm going to line up these edges, sort of figure out where all these edges would actually intersect if they, oops, there we go. I'm not sure where all of these lines are going. Wait, stroke. Oh, I get it. It's because the fill is set to black and the stroke is set to nothing. So I'll set this to black. There we go. There, now we should, what? Wait, what? All right, I'm just going to get rid of these. Go back to the line tool. I'll be much more careful about this now. Select black. Select fill, maybe nothing. I don't know. I don't really care. It's only going to be 1 pixel. Maybe I'll up it just to make sure. Okay. I don't know why it's not letting me draw a line here, but I just want to sort of see where that, damn, what the hell? Sorry, but is it Monday? Good grief. All right. Wait. Oh, weight is set to 0. Let's set it to 2. What? What? I don't know what's going on here, but in other words, I can actually begin to identify. There's one. Okay, good. Ay, ay, ay. Starting to think I'm going crazy here. I've been drawing lines for 30 years. I think I would know how to do it. All right. So there's that vanishing point for our perspective. Of course, we have another vanishing point that goes way off into space here, right? So this technically is sort of a two-point perspective, right? So if we extended those lines way off into space, these two that I just drew, then we would come up with a point way off my screen, in fact, for that other vanishing point. But this is the one that we're really going to react to, right? From there, look at what I'm doing. You can see that I have rulers on, right? So I have a ruler along the top and a ruler along the left. If I click and drag on that top ruler, I'm clicking and then dragging down. I'm dragging a guide. So now I can establish where eye level is, right? That's where my eye sits, let's say. And any scale figures that I put in here are going to have that same eye level, right? I'm going to put their eyeball, the top part of their face right there on that along that line, and then scale them accordingly. Um, It'll also help me establish scale for other things that I put in here. Okay. Now I'm going to get rid of this line with the all these lines that I made. Get rid of those. I don't need those anymore. But I sort of know where this point is. It's right over here. All right. So a couple of things before we start layering up more images in and really start collage. First of all, you can see I have this layer. I have this layer selected over here. Let's talk about how we can adjust certain things like brightness, contrast, exposure, color, saturation, shadows, and highlights. Okay. I don't know why they put it up here. It seems like second nature to me now because I've used Photoshop since like 1997. But if you go to the image pull down and adjustments, all of these tools are the most useful tools you ever find in Photoshop, right? I don't know why they're sort of hidden in a pull down menu. You'll see that there are some adjustment things here that we can make adjustment layers and do these things parametrically, but I just wanted to show you this first. So we can go to brightness, contrast, levels, curves, exposure. Those are all dealing with lighting. Then we can deal with color, vibrance, hue, saturation, color balance, photo filters, etc. Then we can deal with more with like sort of dark and brights with shadows and highlights. All right, so you can see that there's several tools, and a lot of these tools actually overlap quite a bit. So we can adjust certain things with exposure, and we can adjust some of the same things with brightness and contrast, with levels and curves, or with shadows and highlights. So I'll just show you what each of these looks like. Brightness and contrast, not a big surprise. I can brighten that up or darken it, right? Contrast will brighten the bright things and darken the darker things, right? Not a huge surprise there. More contrast or less contrast. Go back to image pull down adjustments. Like if I go to exposure, right, I can, again, if you're thinking about it as a camera, I can increase the exposure, how long I let the shutters open, the shutter speed, or I can reduce it and get a much darker underexposed shot. And of course, I can begin to experiment with contrast with the offset and the gamma correction. I'm just going to go ahead and cancel that. Adjustments, I can go to levels and curves. Levels, let me do similar things. The dark things I can make darker. The bright things I can make brighter. Or the mid range I can make brighter or darker depending on how I want to sort of adjust the contrast, right? Okay, so just different interfaces depending on what kind of control you want. And then curves, what's interesting about curves is it gives you a graph for the brightest spots and the darkest spots. Um, Here I can begin to even select, let's say I just want to select this part right here. Now I can brighten that up or darken it relative to the others, right? So you want to be careful with this one. It's kind of a weird one. It takes a little while to get used to. But that's how you can selectively start to pull out midtones and darken or brighten them if you'd like. Same with color, vibrance, hue, saturation. There's no color in this right now. Well, very little. So you can't really tell if I'm desaturating it, but saturation is how much color there is, right? You can crank that up and get something so colorful that it makes your teeth hurt just looking at it. Or you can crank it down and get something to grayscale, right? Or you can change the hue of these things. Right now, basically, there's no colors to sort of color values to change. So that's why it's that tool doesn't really have much effect on these this layer that we're on right now. But once we start to insert things with color, let's say trees, vegetation, etc., materials, we can begin to sort of try to color match, desaturate, or resaturate depending on what the situation calls for. All right, so with that, right, you can see that we have image adjustments, and there's a whole host of tools here that we'll start to use interchangeably once we get going. And again, it's just one of those things you just have to practice. You start to learn where these things are. And you won't remember it from me just showing you, but it's about trying these things out over and over again. Um, Doing it over and over again is what develops your skill, right? Right. So let me just go and I'm going to start to open a couple of things that I've picked out here. Um, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Documents. I think I have a folder called Entourage where I store things that are helpful, like materials and little silhouettes and things like that. Entourage, there we are. Entourage, skies, um, materials. Here's like board, board marked concrete. There's some gritty concrete, more grit. I like grit. I like saying the word grit. All right. So anyway, skies, let's see. That looks lousy for a ground cover. Let's see. Yeah, there's some more concrete or plaster. We have some flooring. We have some more flooring. Interesting. I'm just going to look through and pick some things out here. That has a watermark on it, so that makes it harder to use. More grit. I have a lot of grit. I think I like grit. I was gonna look for just like, some wood. Textures. Maybe I just go into textures. Ah, here we go. We have wood. It either looks like something that was stained, or maybe it's sort of a reddish tint, like maybe it's cedar. There we have a floor. This looks more like siding or decking. We have pavers. Yeah. Let me open up some wood. Try some wood here. And let me open up some concrete with some grit. I mean, come on. I've said it over and over again. We need some grit. More grit. White grunge texture. Well, I like the sound of that. Concrete. Concrete. So I'll open up this one, and this one. Always like to have more than one thing so we can sort of mix and match, and it doesn't look like I'm sort of wallpapering this thing with identical tiles. All right, so you can see that every time I open up a file, it opens up a new tab up here. I can switch back and forth between the tiles. I recommend trying to keep things organized and named correctly so you can sort of see what is what. Let's try with concrete first. In fact, let's put some concrete down on the ground, and we'll do something easy first. And then later we'll do something that's a little harder, like we'll make a shape up here with it that we have to sort of cut some holes and stretch it out over a shape with. Okay, so let's go to concrete. Let's see, white grunge texture. White grunge. These aren't as big as I thought they were. Oh well. And I'm just gonna, I can select everything with this rectangular tool. Um, it's just habit for me now. I just hit Control A or Command A, depending on which operating system I'm in, to select everything, then Control Command C, right, to copy, and then Control V to paste, right? So let's see. There we go. So I pasted this in. You can see now I have a square of concrete, grungy, gritty looking stuff right here. It's on its own layer. I can move it independently of the other layer. Right. So you can see it's not matching the perspective at all. At the same time, we need more. of it, right? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up another one. I'm going to select all, copy, and then paste. Get some more concrete here. We're going to start to blend these things together and make a bigger texture here in just a moment. I think I haven't done this one yet, so I'll select all, Control A, copy, Control C, paste, Control V. All right. Oh man, this is grit heaven right here. All right. Now, if I want to start to change, how do I put this? If I'm going to start to change the shape, scale it down, scale it up, skew it, etc. Here's the other fun part. They've hidden it again in a pull down menu. Edit, transform. Okay. So I'm going to leave this here for a minute in case you're watching the recording after this. I'm in the edit pull down menu and I go down to transform and I have things like scale, rotate, skew, distort, perspective, and warp. All right. So let's go with scale. All right. You can see the layer I had selected is now editable and I could scale it. Let's pick this one. I want this one right here. All right. Edit, transform, scale. I'm just going to scale that up a bit so it actually matches up with this. Now you can see the seams in between these things, so it's not a continuous um, pattern, right? You can see that all of these are on their own layers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select, by holding down the Shift key, select all of these layers, layer 4, layer 3, layer 2, all of these concrete layers. I'm going to right click and I'm just going to say merge those layers together. Now they're all in one layer. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a brush tool called the clone stamp tool to sort of erase away these edges where you can see between, let's say, this piece of concrete and this piece of concrete and this piece of concrete. We haven't even begun to sort of adjust this to the shape of the ground yet or anything like that, but I just want to make a texture from a series of smaller textures. Okay, and so let's find that clone stamp tool. Where is it? Clone stamp. There it is. It looks like a stamp, like if you were a notary or something. It's called clone stamp. Paints with pixels from other parts of the image. Okay. And when I click on this, you can see that my cursor changes. It looks like this is the cursor for a brush, right? So you have the shape of the brush. In this case, it's round. You have the size of the brush. I can adjust these things up here. I can adjust the size and now it's much smaller. I can adjust it big and now it's much larger, right? Okay. So I'm going to find a mid ground here. And then I can also have its hardness, how much how much pressure it's applying, and then also the shape, right? So in this case, it's soft round. In other words, it has feathered edges instead of a hard, crisp edge. So the difference there is, let me just show you. Let me get a paintbrush, with black ink. That's the current brush I have with this sort of soft round. If I go hard round, then I'm going to have a nice crisp edge, right? I don't want a crisp edge. I want to sort of feather things out. So again, I'm just going to go to soft round. I'll keep my size there. Go to clone stamp. All right. And now clone stamp's a fun one because you can see my cursor and I can't really draw anything yet. What I have to do is hold down my option key on the Mac keyboard. I might be the Alt button on the PC keyboard. You can see that my cursor changes to a target. And I can click on a piece of the existing, and now I can start to adjust. Oh yeah, look at that. I'll just sample another target over here, and then I'll start to just ever so slightly fill that in. And then one more time here. Give it some grit. Find some of that texture there. Oh yeah, look at that. Okay. Anyway, right. Now I have a texture without seams. It's a little larger, and I can start to use this a little easier now. All right. I have it selected. I can go to Edit, Transform. Here's a fun one. Let's go with I always pick the wrong one, but I think it's distort. Oh yeah, look at that. Now I can begin to actually stretch this out along the perspective that I want. And actually match up with the ground surface as needed. Just going to try to follow over here and over here. Thinking about where that point is, I want to match that perspective. Now you notice that if I pull this back, you'll see that there's shadows, soft shadows and things like that on the ground. But I don't want to lose those. So I'm going to go ahead and stretch this over to fill the space the way I want and hit enter when I'm done transforming. But now I want to go ahead and I want to do something to this so I can see those shadows, right? Now it looks sort of flat. So what I can do is I have this layer selected in my layers box where it says normal, there's a pull down tool. And I can begin to experiment with making this an overlay layer and showing some of those existing shadows. Some of them get quite bright and silly, and so then it's almost like what was the point of putting that grit texture on? And light, hard. Let's see, difference, exclusion, subtract, saturation. So let's see, darken, multiply, color burn, normal. Let's go with darken, right? So now we can still see all those shadows that we had there. All right. Okay. Should we do some more concrete? Let's try some more concrete and then we'll do some wood. I'll go ahead and select all, copy. Let's put some more concrete here. I can't get enough concrete. I love concrete. All right. So let's say we want to put concrete on this face right here, right? Oof. It's going to be a little uphill for us, but we have ways to do it. So let's see. First and foremost, I'm going to go ahead and stretch this out so it actually has a shot at covering that surface here. Oh, actually that surface extends all the way down, doesn't it? Oof. Let's see. I don't know how far I can scale this texture with it and without it sort of looking goofy and pixelated, but let's just try it. Why not? All right. We're getting closer. Let's see. That covers just about everything. Okay. Okay. And so I have that resized now. Let's see here. What I'm looking for, and maybe they've hidden it from me in the latest release, is oftentimes there's tools up here, and those tools would let me show transform controls. There's a line distribute. They would have let me sort of adjust the opacity of this layer. So no worries. We have this layer, and I'm going to go down to the layers box. I'm going to adjust its opacity down so we can see behind it just a bit. We can still see it, but we want to be able to see all the geometry behind it as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the parts that I want to keep of this texture. So I'm going to go this is where I'm going to use the polygonal lasso tool. I'm going to zoom in, and I'm just going to, like, let's say, select that corner. I'm just going to go around the shape that I want to keep. Da-da-da-da. This is why it comes in really handy to be able to sort of adjust the opacity of your layer so you can see beyond it, behind it, like it's a piece of trace paper. And we'll close that up. All right, so we have the part that we want to keep, right? But what we want to do is we want to delete away all the stuff that we don't want to keep, right? So when it's easier for me to select the shape and then go to the select pull down and say, let's invert the selection. Now everything on the outside is selected and I can delete it away, right? Let's see here. Where is it? Come on. Delete. right? Okay, it's gone. Yay. All right, now let's increase the opacity back up to 100%. You can see that we have some concrete. And let's figure out a nice darken, multiply. Multiply looks kind of nice, right? If I zoom in, I still get that grit, but I still get also the everything else. Looks kind of nice. Yeah, I can dig it. All right. You can see that with more patience, I can get things quite accurate. And, I didn't quite do that here. It looks like I should have cut a little more off or something, but whatever. This is just a quick demonstration. Now let's try the wood. The wood's interesting because it has a direction to it, right? So we have to be careful here. Let's select it all. Control A, copy, Control C, paste, Control V. All right. So let's maybe I think in the example, yeah, let's see. I don't have it here. In the example I showed earlier, I had it sort of this thing being a set of wood, and I had the planks or the sort of um, what do you call it? The joints running in this direction, right? And then turning up and running in this direction vertically. And then that continued on this way and then went that way. So we have our work cut out for us here, certainly. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this edit, transform, distort again. And let's just, it has a perspective tool. I have yet to find a use for it because I just don't, I, it seems really odd the way it works. You don't have a lot of control over exactly where you want these things to be. So if I go transform, distort, suddenly I can pick exactly where I want that to be, where each vertice. Right. Remember, my vanishing point is somewhere down here, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I've lined that up, try to match the perspective as close as I can. Right. And again, I'm just going to go ahead and turn down its transparency here a bit so I can see which parts to keep. Right. So we have a little bit of cropping and deleting to do here. I want this part, but not this part. Here we are. Hooray. All right, so I selected the part I want. I can go to select pull down. Let's see, inverse, and then hit delete. Right. Now it's gone. Now I didn't quite match this up very well with the perspective. Oof. Which is odd. I think it's yeah. Well, anyway. So let me just undo that really quickly. I can do a better match. Than that. Ay, ay, ay. Command T. No, I don't want to do Command T. Let's see. I'll just select it, edit, transform, distort. Now, once I've done this distortion once, you can see it's going to be harder to do now. But what I want to do is I want to line this joint up with that edge, just like I would if I was a carpenter. Okay, there we go. And now I'll go ahead and just recrop this thing. Let's see. All right, inverse selection and hit delete. All right. If I crank that opacity back up, you can see that it looks pretty out of place. A couple of things here, I might go to adjustments and adjust its hue and saturation. But hear me out first. Before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and put all of these other things in, and then I'll adjust all of them at the same time with the same settings so they don't look all weird and you can start to see seams, right? So it's always good to try to think a step or two ahead if you can. Um, let's see here. What was I going to do though? Oh, I was going to try to find an appropriate overlay layer. Multiply looks fine to me, but now I can begin to adjust its um, from there I can adjust its vibrancy and saturation. If I don't want to have it so bright, I can change that later. Okay, so back to wood. Select all, copy, and paste. Here we go again. This time I'm going to put this sort of fascia right here. Maybe I go all the way across. Ooh, yeah, look at that. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to line this up as close as I can. And then again, we're going to go to Edit, Transform, Distort, bring up those handles for us to use. And we're going to try our very best to get all of these things to line up again. So I'm going to zoom in here so I can really appreciate what is and isn't joining up. It needs to get a little larger. That's never going to work. It's like they get wider here in the center. Uh-huh. Okay. I'm going to hit cancel. And instead, I'm going to go transform, rotate. So now I'll rotate this around. I'll hold the shift key down so I can do it in increments that are, not just completely freehand and all willy-nilly. Okay, now I can match these things up really fairly precisely because they're the same edge. Let's see. Transform, distort. Theoretically, anyway. Oh, why do they not? It's pretty close, but it's off. Oh, that's painful how off that is. They match up better this way? Huh, I wonder why they're not matching up. So odd. Transform, distort. Here we go. They should. Just move this over again, keeping this as close as I can. Oh, it's like they're off by a lot. Ugh. Right around there. Anyway, um, let's see here. Maybe it makes a difference if I start to adjust the perspective up top as well. It doesn't really make that big of a difference, does it? Damn. I thought with these being the same. Oh, weird. Well, at any rate, I think you get the idea. Um, we're looking at concrete, wood, etc. Let me just pull up the example I had up the other day because that one seemed to work pretty well, and I had it. Maybe this is one. Let's see. Yeah. Here I had it, and it all sort of lined up pretty nicely. But again, you can see that there's just a different set of different layers each time. Oop, you can see just a little bit of a bump there. I wasn't quite careful enough. You can get these things to line up with that tool. All right. Let's go over a couple more things that I think are more useful than trying to get some pedantic wood textures to actually line up. Oh, well, let's go ahead and use this. Let's go to image adjustments. Let's go to hue and saturation. You can see I can crank up the color. I can crank it down, right? I could also change how much red or green or blue it has in it here. And of course, I can also darken it up quite a bit. All right. There are some other things here that you can also play around with, right? So, for instance, let's say you want it to be darker back here. I have this selected. There's another brush tool called Dodge and Burn. It's this one with a hand, or it looks like a popsicle, Dodge and Burn. So if I go Burn, let me adjust this just a bit here. So it's a little bigger. There we go. I can basically just darken some things up. Okay. With a paintbrush. I wouldn't necessarily do it right there. But again, just sort of showing you some of the basics here. All right, let's see. What else do I have here? Maybe we add some trees and some people, some humans. What would be a nice city tree, streetscape tree? These aren't bad. Why not? Let's try it. I'll try all three of these and see which one we like the best. So these are trees I just found online by searching Photoshop trees, transparent background, or PNGs. Um, Sometimes they actually have a transparent background. Other times you'll see that they do not, right? So that's like a screenshot showing that it would be a PNG, but it's not. So I'm going to get rid of this one. It's just dumb. Don't have to deal with that. But again, that's where it could be helpful to sort of know how to select certain things. Let's see. Control A, Control C. And let's find my render capture, Control V. All right. So if we wanted to add a tree here, let's say along a streetscape, there's a couple of things. One is we need to figure out where this would be located. And if it does it interfere or overlap or get occluded by any of the stuff that we've already put in. Let's put it back here. Let's transform it and just scale it. All right. And now you can see, let's say that parking lot over here now turned into a park with the tree. But what you can see is that, oh, right, this looks like it should be back behind the building, right? And yet it's not. So there's a couple of things we can do. First, we can drag this back behind, but now you can see that it's not actually touching the ground. It's back behind this sort of ground condition. And so we can do any number of things here with this. The first would be making a copy of the trunk and then just making a new layer and moving that layer up in the hierarchy down here in the layers box. So let's show you what that looks like. If I just use the rectangle tool and select that part of the tree and a copy, Control C, and then paste. All right. We should be able to get these two things to line up fairly well. And I can turn this back on. I can move that new layer up above, right? Or we could, again, clip out the tree and mask it out with this. But then if we want to move the tree like an inch or two over, we've screwed everything up. We have to redo everything, put in a new tree. So that's why I like sort of thinking about how to do this non-destructively. Of course, where that tree actually hits looks kind of odd. Um, but we haven't really done anything yet. Let's see. Let's try to find where's the other tree? Let's see another tree here. Trees, trees, trees. There's a tree. There's a tree. Let's do that one. All right, copy and paste. Control A for select everything, select all, and paste. Let's put this one along the street edge. And again, it's going to be occluded by the building, right? And so again, I'd probably put this back behind that layer, then turn this layer off for a time, and then just get all the sort of trunk and branches and copy and paste. You can see that's there now. Not quite lined up, but let's see what happens when I move it up above and turn this back on. Might be easier. Oops. And I'll zoom in to try to match that up perfectly. I thought there usually a paste in place. Maybe there's a paste in place, which can be pretty handy. Paste in place. Let's do that. So now it'll paste in the exact same spot that it was before. Oops. Oops, I keep selecting the wrong things here. Okay. I'll get rid of that one. And then this one's already up here somewhere. I'll just move it over here. Okay. Now, again, we haven't really solved anything with the ground here, but we'd probably want to put some sort of cut in the sidewalk for that so that it looks like they sort of poured concrete around it and you could still water it, irrigate it, etc., mulch it, whatever. Should we do some people really quickly? Right. This is essentially how you work. You sort of build things up. It's not all going to look photorealistic or even perfect at all the first time you do it. Okay. So don't worry about it. It takes practice, right? The sort of photo montages that you make 2 years from now will be much better than the ones that you make this summer, right? That's just the way it works. All right. So let's go back to my Entourage folder. And I have some people here. Let's see. There's one. There's another one. There's some. All right. So, by the way, where do I get trees and people? You can search for them and just Google search for them. But here's one in particular that works well. If you go to Arch Daily, search Arch Daily and um, let's see, scaled people or something. Let's see. And the first thing that pops up is 13 free sites that offer high quality 2D people and objects for your architectural visualizations, right? So here's a list of links with all kinds of pages that are made for it. And some of them are vectorized and some are photographic. But you can go and start to find different things. You can, try to, there's a bias here with a lot of, at least used to be where it was almost all white people. Now there's sites specifically trying to sort of, give you um, scale figures that sort of more accurately reflect the population. And so you can sort of look through here. What I find is that if I create a folder for these things, and just sort of get in the habit of saving all these things in the folder, then I always have them in the one place, and I can always pull them back out again. There's some that have a much different sort of 3D perspective to them, right? Folks looking down on, which is important if you're sort of up on top of an atrium looking down or doing an aerial view, etc. So you can see that there's different things here. There's different resources. You just have to look for them. But Arch Daily in like scaled people or something, that always brings up a list of stuff that's pretty good to sort of use. Let's see. So let's see. Him, her, him. I'll just bring in some people here. All right. You can see they're already clipped out. Copy and paste. Where's my render capture? There we are. Okay. Now, when we start to add people, we have to really take in consideration eye level, right? So if this person gets closer to us, again, I'm going to line up the eyes with that line. Okay. And when you do that consistently, then you start to actually have a accurate perspective. This guy looks like he'd be a little taller. So keeping that in mind, his eye level might be a little higher than most, but still, if he was walking with this guy, they'd be back here together. I really stretched this guy out. I'm just going to put him back here. in front of this tree, maybe. And maybe even hide that the trunk is kind of goofy. And again, I'm trying to keep layers straight. If I just click on the layer label, I can rename the layer. So I can say rendering tree 1, tree 2. I can start to label these things so I can start to read which one's which over down here. Um, but what's interesting about the trees and the people is that we're casting some shadows, but they don't actually have any shadows, right? So that's one of the things that sort of looks weird. That looks flat. We haven't addressed how they touch the ground, but also that they would be casting some sort of shadow with them, right? So let's try that. We'll take this guy, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to this layer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the layer he's on. I'm going to right click. I'm going to say duplicate the layer. It's going to make a new layer, just like the one before. Okay. I'm just going to move it off to the side here a little bit so we can see it. Okay. Remember the tools that we have at our disposal. I'm just going to move them off to the side. We can go to Image, Adjustments. We can go to Exposure, and we can turn the exposure all the way down. Make it a silhouette. Then we can crank down the opacity, right? And last, we can edit, and we'll rotate this around a bit. What I want to do first is rotate it. I'm going to put it over here, and I'm just going to try to match the shadows from before. Yeah, that's not bad. And I'm going to also skew it just a bit. Try to make everything sort of line up with his feet here. And again, narrow things out a bit. And of course, if there was an edge here and it went down further, then I would change that shadow. But that's how you can begin to do shadows. Or if you think you just have soft shadows, I'll go ahead and select that ground condition. Let's see. There it is. Right? And I can paint a shadow. I could use the burn tool. Maybe change the size of the brush here a bit, right? And add a little bit of soft shadow or something there, right? Okay. So those are several ways you can begin to sort of use Photoshop. And like I said, between now and tomorrow, I want you to try with one of your perspectives. Try adding some humans, try adding a material or two, try adding some trees, try adding a background bitmap, right? Something I could use a sky, I could do whatever. Let me see what I have here. I mean, you'll remember I have, you could always go to the site and take photographs that you can then match the perspective of. But I have a couple of skies here. Good way to find skies. Again, Google image search. High res sky image, more, no tools, size, large, right? Then find one and you get the Milky Way. That seems like you wouldn't see that in downtown Las Vegas. No, I know I've tried. Um, what would be a good Nevada sky? This one looks pretty nice. I'm just going to right click and say open image new tab right here and see if we get the original huge. Oh yeah, look at that. That's so large, it's stupid. All right, save images as. I'm going to, again, I'm trying to get in the habit of this. Documents. I made my own Entourage folder. There's a book called Entourage that used to have little scaled figures that you could trace or print out on sticky back and then paste onto your drawings. So that's why we call it entourage still. But let's see here. Let's open that up. Sorry, this is the Camera Raw filter. Okay, here we go. Select all, copy, and paste. You can see that I have quite a few files opened up now. Let's say I want to put this way out here. And I'm going to probably put this behind everything else. And now I really have to worry about, well, if this is an urban environment, a natural environment, what do I do for the ground? Before I showed this idea, what I did is can I export? Okay, great. Let me go back here, maps.google.com. Da, da, da. All right, all the way on the southwest side here for me. Let's go over here. Bridger, third, fourth, fifth. All right, here we go. Oh yeah, so lovely. Anyway, if I wanted to, I could begin to sort of figure out try to match some sort of perspective here, right? I think the one I actually used was somewhere like over here, but now it's changed and updated a bit. Let's say I wanted to match the perspective. I just want to get some of this urban context. I'm not really worried about the street. I'm not worried about it being completely photorealistic. Google Street View, can you save, or do I just have to like do a screen capture? I can't remember. But anyway, I have one up here. You remember? Let's see. Let me just open it up. Da, 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 Document. This is like a cooking show, right? Put something in the oven, but then you take what's been in the oven for 40 minutes out to show you what it looks like. Teaching, maybe 21, maybe. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, here's a screenshot from Google Street Maps. That's basically all it is. It's funny. Yeah, there we go. Ta-da. Select all, copy, paste. See what this looks like when it's stretched. Not the highest resolution, but let's put it back all the way down here. Right. Now, what's funny is that we have to do something here. We have to sort of figure this thing out. But I didn't do too bad in matching the perspective up. It's not awful. And in fact, what I probably want to do is take this and do the adjustments, hue, saturation. Let's take out some of the saturation. Let's take out some of the color. Right. I don't really care that much. I'll maybe brighten it up a bit. It's fine. Right. This is a collage. I don't want the focus to be on, the construction project going on across the streets. I want it to be about this. So maybe we make all this sort of new stuff sort of pop out, or whatever. Maybe that's the thinking behind it. Right. I can just continue to add and layer things up. Let me go back to documents, entourage. Let's find another tree or two. There's a tree. There's a tree. Let's try to use both of those really quickly. One, I'll have to clip the background out, so that'll be good practice. That one, in fact, that's from Adobe Stock. Let's see, here we go. Here's one. Select all, copy. I'm like Bob Ross sometimes. I mean, this tree looks lonely. Let's give it a friend, right? I mean, come on. You want to be nice. Be a nice guy. Let's see. Where did that new tree go? There it is. All the way back there. Let's move it up. But let's move it back behind this one. Okay, I see. So we could add more vegetation back here. The key thing with that again is that I would have to actually make a new layer with that trunk. Ugh, it's so annoying, but it is what it is. Copy. And oops. Remember, instead of just doing the regular paste, I can do edit, paste special, paste in place. Now it's pasted in the exact same place that it was in the screen. I can just move that up a bit. There we are. All right. Let's do another tree really quickly before we go. Here's another selection option for you. Okay, so first of all, this is a background. I'm going to go ahead and double click it, make it a regular layer. All right, so now it doesn't have a little padlock over here on the layers. I can go ahead and select this and just delete it away. You can see that there's transparent stuff back there. Let's say I want to select all the white. What I can do is I can also go to the select pull down, and I can say select by color range. This is going to bring up a box, and it's going to turn your cursor to a little eyedropper tool. You can select the color that you'd like to select. Click on the color you want to select, and then how fuzzy or meticulate it is, and hit OK. I've selected all the white. Let's see if that got rid of all the white. I can copy and paste this bad boy in. There we are. Now you might want to readjust that depending on what you need to do here. Sometimes if you don't get all the whites, then it gets a halo effect, and then it's pretty obvious that it was photoshopped. But it's not necessarily a bad thing to have things photoshopped. There's a tree. Let's take a look at some of these trees. Some of these, like this tree, just feels like it wants to stick out just a little too much. I'm going to go back to hue saturation. I'm going to crank down saturation a little bit. I don't want it to be the one thing that I notice. I don't want it to draw my eye away from the architecture, do I? Maybe darkening it up a little bit. Yeah. Let's add some more people, you know. That's a nice tree. If I was a person, I'd be standing next to that tree. And in fact, I think she's going to. All right, let's try it. All right. First things first, I'm gonna put her at eye level. Now her feet are over here, so she's behind the tree. Let's just make her a little. There we go, right in front of that tree. Ta-da! All right. Who else do we have? This person. Let's see. We will put her. She looks like she's in a hurry. She's sort of walking. Put her in front of these trees. Right. And again, I'd have to sort of worry about their shadows, come up with a consistent way to cast those. Same with the trees, right? I mentioned that before. Um, so anyway, that's how you can begin to play around with these. And all right. So really quickly, we started to layer some things up. Again, I would focus on some of these things that we see here. Let's see, go back to that rendering and go to image adjustments. And I can go to, let's see, brightness and contrast. There we go. Maybe I turn down the brightness a bit. Get some of those dark places darker. Yeah, there we go. Maybe even go to exposure. Maybe just lower the exposure a bit. Right. All right. So again, just playing around here. Now with people, I mean, again, they can stand out, particularly if they're wearing like colored clothing, bright colors, for instance. Like here's a tan jacket. It's pretty neutral. Most of these colors are fairly neutral or sort of, toned down warm colors, for instance. But you can always sort of play around with, again, sort of toning them down, depending on how you want. Turn down their saturation a bit, maybe brighten them up or darken them. Maybe I'll just do saturation for each of these. You don't want them to look like they just came right out of a magazine. And were copied and just like literally glued into there. So, or maybe you do, right? Maybe that's part of this. Let's see. Desaturate her a bit. Same with this guy. He's way up front here. I'm gonna um, maybe turn down the saturation. Another thing you can do. Oop, there. Um, what layer is this guy? That one. Okay. Image adjustments, saturation. So hopefully you guys get the idea. And again, if this is new to you, I apologize. Or sorry, old news to you, then I apologize. But um, it can be pretty handy to be able to sort of, figure out your way around this thing. When I'm done with this guide, I can just move it out. Doesn't need to be there anymore. Okay. From here, maybe I'm like, maybe it's showing just a little too much. Maybe I'll crop it up. Again, maybe I let this tree frame the left side, let this tree frame the right side. Tighten that up a bit so I don't see the edge of that slab. Maybe that's a little too much, right? Maybe I want to do that. I want to get rid of the edge of that slab, but maybe I don't necessarily need to crop it to do that, right? Another way I can do that is using rendering, and let's use the generative fill tool. I'll just use the freehand lasso and select that part, and I'll hit generative fill and just hit generate. Let's see what it gives me offhand. See if it'll just continue the ground surface. Usually not too bad at figuring that out. Yeah. So here's another way of using AI to help us out to sort of speed some things up here. Um, did give me a little glitch there. It's kind of weird. And generative layer. Let me see. Here we go. Oh, we have different variations. I like that one. Let's do that one. All right. There. Now we're starting to sort of figure this thing out. Yeah. When I save, I'm going to make sure I save as a PSD file, right? So Photoshop file, what that does is it preserves all of my layers so I can go back in and continue to adjust things. When I need to dump this into a PowerPoint or PDF or a board, I can save as a JPEG or a PNG or a TIFF file. I can just put that in. But the PSD files are the original files you want to be able to open up and continue to play around with and use in Photoshop, right? So you can see every time I open up a PSD, I get all of the layers again. I can, say, well, maybe I don't like this guy. He looks a little, you know, I don't know, whatever, move him around or change him or swap him out for someone else. Maybe I want a group of people or something in the back, whatever. All right. Yeah. I could do a better job there, but whatever. Work is never done, is it? All right. In fact, this tree is bugging me. It's really, really standing out. So I'm going to turn down saturation. There we go. Now I just have some golds and olives and a little bit of forest green here and there. Goes well with the sort of red orange of the wood, right? Green and red are complements. All right. Save. So these are some of the ones I did the other day. Again, um, this one was from Revit. I probably would have picked a different render mode. This looks a little flat to me, but you could still use it. It's not a big deal. With this, I might actually just pick some silhouettes to put in. Here, let me do that really quickly and show you. Let's see. No, documents, entourage. Here we go. Yeah, why not? This is just a flat set of silhouettes, for better or worse. And they're actually kind of small. Ugh, weird. Hmm. Yeah, those are too small. Those are going to be pixelated if I put those in. Let me find a different set here. Open. I have some vector ones that I shared with you already. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So we can open up these vector packs as well. Let me do that in Photoshop. Right, you can see that they become pixelated when you open up on Photoshop, but they're transparent background as well. So let me just take a look, see here. I'll just select this person right here. I'll just draw a box around him, copy, and then I'll go back to, let's see, this interior perspective and paste, right? Okay. Maybe I like that. Let's see. I can always go to layer and I can go to right click on the layer that I'm on. And I could go to where is it? The blending options? No, where's the layer options here? There's something specific that I'm looking for. Maybe it's blending options. Yeah, here we go. Okay. So we have this layer, now we have all these options. So we could actually put a stroke around it if we wanted to. That seems a bit extreme, maybe one. Or we could change the stroke color to black. Here, let me actually cancel that really quickly. If I want to go to image, adjust, and invert, I can invert it. So now black is white and white is black. Then I can go here. Let's see. Da-da-da-da. Go to blending options. And let's give it a stroke. That's black. 0, 0, 0. Right. Maybe then we even turn down its opacity, right? So you can begin to play around with different effects, again, playing around with this idea that, maybe it looks more like a cartoon or a graphic novel. Or, if you have these sort of flat shading and shadows, then you start to add flat people like silhouettes instead of photographic people, right? So you can always play around with these things. Again, it's sort of developing both your skills as well as your own sensibility and tastes, as what you actually prefer. Um, once I actually have that, then I can go back and start to add more people. Let's try to find some more. Someone with a surfboard. That seems kind of weird. Someone doing some judo chops or something. I don't know what's going on there. Um, Yoga. Okay. Let's get somebody who's like sort of walking on the move. Let's see here. Let me get a different tool. Polygonal lasso tool. Deselect. Stop it. Copy. And I think it's this one, right? Paste. But once we do it, we would probably do the same thing for everybody, right? So again, I can go to image adjustments, just like I can change the brightness contrast, I can invert the colors, right? And go here to blend options. Let's turn on stroke with black, weight of 1. And let's select this one that's transparent, opacity of 82%. So we'll do the same thing with her. Yeah. Similar eye level, but let's say she's further back. There. Yeah. So anyway, you get the idea, I think, right? You could play around with this stuff, try your best to sort of begin to add scale, then some some materiality to your perspectives, right? So we talked a little bit about this, right? I think particularly those who were new to this had questions about like, well, how do I add materials, right? And things like that. Um, Honestly, the easiest way I find oftentimes is in Photoshop sorry, post production and Photoshop after rendering, right? Like you can try to render these things out. In fact, there are third-party render engines. Maybe you can get them for free. I just like I was gonna just maybe show you guys Lumion or Enscape. But like I started downloading, it was like 30 gigabytes, and I was like, I don't even have like I only have like 50 free gigabytes on my hard drive right now. Like, I mean, it seems really bloated and over the top to me. We're going to be, for the purposes of beginning design, collaging and really telling a story, trying to give representation that conveys an idea is more important than photorealism. And I would argue that's oftentimes the case, particularly when it comes to school, where we're judging you on how good of an idea you came up with, concept you came up with, and how well you're following through with it, right? Executing it. So, to me, I think that's something worth mentioning, right? Like, don't worry about photorealism. Again, I'm going to stress that. Worry about the story you're trying to tell, the idea or concept you're trying to convey to the audience. Okay. All right. That was a lot to share in a short amount of time.